Hey, it's Gary Mintchell here, speaking on manufacturing. And it's the end of February, out in the park in Sydney, Ohio. Shouldn't be out in the park talking like this in Sydney, Ohio, but what weird weather we had. It's a weird winter, and we have those. We'll pay for it, as they like to say. We'll pay for it next year. Who knows? But it's 64, 66 degrees, and on the other hand, it should be 32 with a foot of snow on the ground this time of the year. I'll take this. I love being in the park. So, speaking on manufacturing, it's been in the news a lot this winter as we've recovered from the recession, and I think people are starting to understand, we have recovered from the recession. I mean, statistically speaking, we did a long time ago, but people are starting to feel better. There is a lot of hiring going on, and we still get articles about manufacturing leading the way, and I still see some. There's still some layoffs, but there are companies in trouble, all the time. Anyway, but when I started kind of in this gig, being an editor in '98, I had come from selling automation for a while. I was looking for a stable job, and certainly. The company I sold for is one of two companies in my career that still exists. All the rest of them, including my last employer, are all gone. So that was interesting. So it was a good choice, and I met a lot of good people. But I sold automation equipment, and before that, I bought automation equipment one way or another for machines. And the people who did a lot of the purchasing, now maybe not actually signing the line, but the people we talked to, the influencers and the people that and made the decision were control engineers or process engineers, or the term automation engineer didn't really exist back in those days. But it was an engineering type, and so I would go in. There would be an engineering manager, maybe in some plants that were good customers of mine. There was really only one. In another plant, there was a chemical plant. There were different areas, and every area had its process engineer, and I worked with the process engineer. I never talked to operations anywhere, really. I knew the general manager of the Ford plant that was one of my customers, but and occasionally I talked to the plants, the area superintendents at the Ford plant, but most of my time was spent with engineers. Now, sometimes they were called by different names. In one plant that I called on, the person's title was maintenance manager, but he was actually head manufacturing engineer as well. So what I saw happening, and when we started Automation World 9 years ago, it looked like more and more and more the final decision didn't rest solely with the engineer, that more people were coming in. We were getting accountants, purchasing kind of people, kind of getting more and more play. IT had to come in and give their blessing that the networking would all work and that sort of thing. And so we started with a concept of automation team back in the early Automation World days. And I'm just curious. I know a lot of people listen to this and very few people comment, and that's okay. But unless they come up to me at a trade show or something and say, I'd like to see another video. But I am really curious, and if you've got any thoughts, I'm always trying to learn what's going on, and I'm thinking that over the last 6 to 8 years or more, that the control engineering, process engineering, automation engineering staffs have been decimated. There was a feeling like we don't really need a whole lot of engineers anymore because we're not going to do a lot of building right now. And so if that's one reason, or maybe it's just some other reason, in my career I saw pendulum swings from engineering to marketing, for example, in some companies. Never a good thing when it goes to marketing. But anyway, I'm just curious, what has happened, and if what I'm seeing and sensing is what you're sensing, that operations is an awful lot more the decision maker. Now maybe hire like a plant manager, general manager, kind of depending on how companies structure their titles, which is always fascinating to me. There doesn't seem to be any sense a lot of times, but so I'm just curious about that. The decision making is changing, and if that means anything or not. A lot of operations people have engineering backgrounds anyway, so they should have some technical knowledge of what's going on and a logical thought process, which is good. Speaking of manufacturing, it makes the news a lot, plus and minus. And mainstream media, whenever you read the New York Times, kind of drives me crazy. There for a while, both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal were uh, doing a series of articles on manufacturing, and it is obvious the writer had never been in a plant or in a factory. Had no clue what they were writing about. They just went out, they quoted a couple of people and wrote a story, and it was just so much happy horse crap. And you know, I felt like writing. One of my colleagues, another editor, actually wrote to the New York Times. It got printed about how off the wall they were about that whole thing. But but you never know. But the other thing that gets in there right now, Apple is really taking a lot of crap. And this morning, and like I said, it's the end of February 29th, Leap Day. But anyway, Apple's been taking a lot because of Foxconn, and it's just year after year of documented problems at Foxconn. Is that any way to run manufacturing? I ask you. An Apple executive was quoted in the New York Times as being so proud of Foxconn that when they made a last-minute decision to change from plastic to glass on the iPhone or iPad, I guess iPhone, that they were able to wake up 12,000 people in the middle of the night, give them a really quick little breakfast, give them a couple of little hard biscuits and some tea, send them out on the line, and they immediately started churning out new product. And they could gear up the entire shift just that quick because, one, they all live in the dorm right there at the plant, and two, I mean, it's like a dictatorship. You know, it's like, hey, the bell rings, you get up, you go out, Pavlov's dog or something. And he was so proud that they could do that. And I'm thinking, but that's a lack of management. You don't do things like that. I mean, on the whim of the CEO, you wake 12,000 people up in the middle of the night and send them out on the production line to work 12-hour shift. Come on, give me a break. That just doesn't make any sense at all. And so Apple finally took enough heat, and now Tim Cook is in charge. And so they decide to send in somebody to look at it. And immediately, before they even looked, and I've heard this before in my career, people had their minds made up before they investigated. Said, oh, well, there's never been any problem. They're the same as every other plant in China. And I'm thinking, that's not the question. The question is, how are they really treating people? And how long, the question I ask is, how long are the people going to take it? Right now, they're fresh off the farm, going to the factory, they're young, they're making money, they're sending money back home, things are really good. It'll be good for a few years, couple of years maybe, but how long can they really exploit people like that until it goes bad? Yeah, it's a bad name for manufacturing. There's a lean manufacturing guru guy that I follow his blog, and he's an Apple fanboy, and he's decided he's not going to buy another Apple. He just can't ethically take it anymore, even though he likes the products. That if I'm a lean manufacturing person and they're the very antithesis of lean, how can I continue to support them? And so he's made that decision, and you know, it's very good for him as I sit here with my MacBook Pro and my iPad, although I've got an Android phone. But anyway, those are things we need to think about. As we are manufacturing leaders, are we helping to make things better and to provide the education, training, and evangelism to do manufacturing the right way, in a way that treats people well, that reduces waste, that gets over this nonsense that I'm saving money in labor cost when labor cost is a very small part of the actual cost of a product. You know, that's not really, that's just an excuse. It's an excuse for lazy thinking. And so this is a little bit of a diatribe, but once again, it goes back to this leadership thing. You know, the engineers don't seem to be making a lot of decisions they used to make, and it falls on operations. But a lot of operations, some are engineering, but some of them are bean counters, degree MBA in finance or something, and the regional kinds of people are finance or marketing people. And they don't have a clue. Manufacturing's a black box, and they just look at it as a sunk cost somewhere. And we need more of us to get up and speak up and say manufacturing, if done correctly, is a profit center for a corporation. It provides good jobs for people, which is something ethically we need to think about. I think ethics matter, and ethics have cost me money in my life. Probably cost me a job where I chose to be at home with my kids in the evenings rather than drinking with the boss and the crew in the evenings every night. Um, yeah, I don't begrudge it. I mean, that's fine. They did their choice. I made my choice. But I think the right choice is an ethical choice. So I'm just curious. So what do you think about all this? Do you think that more of us need to stand up and say something, or is it a lost cause? And I'm also curious, who's making the decisions now? Are decisions being made at an appropriate level? So you can write to me, Mintchell at automationworld.com, um, or tweet or whatever. Just interested in hearing. It's Gary Mintchell on manufacturing, February 29th, 2012.